Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, folks who are tuning in. Great to have you with us. Hi, Mackenzie and Chris. Excellent. Ida's here. Hey, Ida. Haven't seen you in a while. Juliet. Beautiful. Excellent. Well, welcome, folks, to the virtual tour of intentional communities, our session here in the month of October. Very excited for today's community, Atelier Farm. Am I pronouncing that right, Austin?
Um, well, it's a French loanword, so we can pronounce it however we want. But Atelier is probably how we would
Atelier.
say it. Yes,
Atelier,
I would.
yes.
Yeah. Uh,
That's very elegant. Atelier, yes. Thank you. Good. Okay. Well, I think everyone here knows me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Cynthia. I'm going to be the host for today's session and joined here by Austin, who's today's presenter. And I'm going to start with a quick welcome presentation, just a few of the usual housekeeping things, a few announcements, and then we will get into the presentation. So, Atelier Farm, located in upstate New York, a farming community. I've been really excited by how many new communities we've had joining in. So, not only learning from established intentional communities, but also new ones that are getting started. So, we get to learn about the development process and what it really takes to get a community off the ground. Of course, you can learn how you can get involved with this community, especially. All right. So we are hosting live on Zoom. This event is being recorded, and we'll put the recording afterwards on YouTube if you want to watch it again. All of our past recordings are there of all of these virtual tour events going back several years now. And for those of you who are joining us live on Zoom, go ahead and use the chat feature on your Zoom screen. That's one of my favorite aspects of Zoom, is that we get to use this chat button to network with each other, to connect a little bit. I know we're all coming from various parts of the United States and even the globe. So if you want to go ahead and put into the chat a short introduction of where you're calling in from. If you live in an intentional community, let us know which one. And also, what do you hope to learn or get out of this session today? If there's something in particular you're excited to learn, and we can kind of steer the conversation towards that. Juliet is joining us from Canada. Nice. Right, let's see who else. So while you're putting in your message, I'll share a few more things. Oh, Moria from San Jose, California. Nice. And I'm in Vermont, so right now we're straddling the whole United States. It's awesome. Okay, so this event is put on in partnership with the Foundation for Intentional Community. They're the folks at IC.org, wonderful nonprofit organization. They've been supporting this movement of intentional communities for decades. Really a wonderful nonprofit to support, especially as we head into the end of the year and donation season. They are a 501(c)(3), so a great charitable organization if you're looking for a tax-exempt donation to make. And as I mentioned before, we have all these past virtual tour events on the YouTube channel. It's actually on the YouTube channel of the Foundation for Intentional Community. They have a wealth of resources, and I mean, at this point, I think I've done well over 100 of these different virtual tours, so there's a lot to explore on the YouTube channel. This event is also put on with my organization, CommunityFinders, communityfinders.com. I know we have a lot of members in the room, so shout out to all the Community Finder members. We meet once a week on Thursdays, and we hear from communities like the one today, and we have group coaching. And it's a blog. It's my blog that I have more than 30 articles. I just put out a new one this morning, all about governance structures and legal structures within intentional communities. So I encourage you to check out the blog at communityfinders.com. All right. Next virtual tour event is going to be on October 23rd. So we do these events every 2 weeks and always at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern. So on October 23rd, we're going to have a community called Futura. Terra Futura. They are based in North Carolina, outside of Asheville. They are also a newly forming community. They have several homes already built. They have openings for new members. Their whole focus is on sustainability and regeneration, beautiful farms. Yeah, and Asheville is such a hub for community, many intentional communities in that region, and this is one of the newer ones. So I'm really excited to connect with them. All right, so I hope you join me in 2 weeks, October 23rd. Mark your calendar. And that's all that I have. So welcome once again, everyone who came in a little later. Thank you so much for putting your messages in the chat. Michael from Costa Rica, Chris, Western Massachusetts, Lucy from Germany. Oh my goodness. Lucy, it must be getting late in the evening there. So glad that you're here. Awesome. Okay, yeah, and Lisa Ulrich, beautiful. All right, so yeah, prepare yourself to give your full attention to our presenter today. We're going to be together for the next hour or so. I'm going to invite Austin to give a 20-minute-ish presentation about Atelier community, and then after that, we'll have our Q&A portion. So really be thinking about questions you might want to ask. If you have a notebook handy, you can write that down. Feel free to drop your questions into the chat, and I'll try to track those and make sure we get to as many questions as we can at the end. Beautiful. All right. So, Austin, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to jump into your presentation? Would you like me to share the screen now?
Sure, we can do that. Alrighty.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love we got a fairly sizable crowd here. So I think there's been a lot of curiosity about your community, especially because you actually don't have a lot that we've seen like on the website. So I think people are really curious. Ooh, what's happening? So I'll share my screen and just tell me if you want me to go up or down
Sure.
or.
Okay. Am I visible? Can I like wave at people, or is it
Yep.
the screen that you see? Okay. All right. Hello.
You are visible, and in fact,
Okay.
I'm gonna
Great.
put a spotlight on you, so you're extra visible.
Uh, I actually prefer in real life. I'm not.
Too late.
I know. So, alrighty. So I will introduce myself shortly, just because I think the community story is my story at this point, since we haven't started yet, and that's useful. But before we start, so Atelier Farm and Commons is kind of the idea of what we're beginning with. So I said life at human scale. So it's 400 acres. That's like 160 hectares or something like that. It's 1.5 miles from a small town on Lake Champlain, the Adirondack Park, and that's far northeast New York. So it's a 30-minute ferry across the lake to Vermont. It's an hour to Canada if you go north, and about 5 hours to the city, to New York City, and slightly less time to Boston, actually. And so the status of the community is that it's not, we're pre-purchase and we're looking for folks. Yeah, so that's where we are right now. So how did I end up actually here, which is in Essex / Willsboro, New York? So I was born in New York in the Hudson Valley, 1979, long ago. But I grew up in Pennsylvania in the center of the state, south enough to have mountains, but south enough to have farming land, but north enough to have mountains, far enough away from Pittsburgh and Philly that we were kind of our own thing. Penn State was our college town where I grew up, and it was a really nice place to grow up. I did go there to Penn State as a student, and I was a student of basically nothing. I just got good grades, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. Till at an environmental action club, a young farmer came and gave a kind of a presentation about his bike trip across the country, going farm to farm to farm. and he was starting a CSA, which was a new thing at the time, and nobody knew what that was, and he needed folks to help. And so he asked everyone in our club to help, and I said, I just lit a service spring break trip, and I have another load of people who can come help. So we all showed up on the weekend, and everybody who showed up was actually just me. And retrospectively, it's actually peculiar to me that I was the only one who felt so captivated by farming because it seems so natural. But that's just the way it was. I volunteered, but it takes some time to change the course of our life. So I taught ecology education. I went to grad school. I studied a mix of philosophy, theology, creative nonfiction. I backpacked the Appalachian Trail a couple times, and then finally, 10 years later, I was farming full time. And I farmed geographically, if not chronologically, from Virginia to Maryland to Pennsylvania to Michigan to New Hampshire to Maine. And that's where I was 15 years later in Maine, on an island, but they've had a bridge since the 60s, but it's still very much an island. And I was building out a small town with or a small farm with my wife, and two children and one on the way. And children kind of change the calculus on everything, basically. And I was kind of wrestling every day with what can I do to give them a childhood worthy of their life. And where we were was really fantastic for my wife and me, but maybe not for raising children. And so I started to think about how to answer that question. And that's kind of where community and tiny eco-village came in. So while I farmed across all those different places and variously sized farms, most of the time, except in the end when I had my own farm, I was working with a crew of folks, and I really liked it. And retrospectively, essentially every little farm is like a little community, a little eco village. I never left except for like dirty Yahoo dinner runs, maybe on a Friday night or some Sunday movies, that kind of thing. And I really liked that, but that isn't something I can give my children because they kind of pull life out way beyond farm bounds. And so I started to think about like, what if I could build life into something bigger than a farm, but smaller than a town. So that's what I started to think of. Yeah, that's the start of what I started to think of. So I started looking for large acreage on the East Coast because that's where I'm most comfortable in Northeast. And a lot of dead ends, but after a while, not too long, I found this 400-acre property we'll be talking about in this past December. And so uh, I learned as much as I could about it, and I zoomed a little bit out on the map. And just across from the woods of this farm is actually the farmer I first started working with in Pennsylvania. He has 1,000 acres right there. And so I wasn't sure what, usually I tell myself like, go forward, don't go back. When you want to go back, go forward. And so I wondered like, is this going back something that was really 25 years ago at this point? But I reached out and I talked with him and he said, well, you should definitely come. uh, I don't, I don't like bite hooks. So I visited in January. I did as much research as I could to see what's the regulatory nature of doing something like that. There, it's in the Adirondack Park. So the Adirondack Park Agency, the APA, has its own zoning, which overlays whatever the town would be doing. And so I went through all of that to see what would be possible. And most of that came down to like how many homes we could have on the property without having like enormous public hearings. So so what is this property? So you can
400
see here.
acres,
So
dude.
what's that? Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
It-
yeah, that's okay. I'll just make sure everyone's muted. Go ahead, Austin. Yeah, we're listening. This is awesome. I really love your story. It's
okay.
it's really great to hear.
So we moved to town in June, my wife and three children and I. The child was 9 months old or so at the time, and to see if we liked it. And it's a nice twist of fate that it's even better than I imagined. It's kind of pinch your cheeky. Um, And so the lake access is like you can go swimming on the lake, you can go paddling. It's a walkable town. We're working on making it even neater to go to. There's a fair seasonal population, which is good and bad for different reasons. And it's, I guess, crunchy enough to accept something like this. So we thought, great. So we're renting, but after just a couple months, maybe 2 months, the original farmhouse and barns that were part of about 150 of these 400 acres went up for sale by owner. So um, we decided to buy that. So it might not be the most sane financial thing to do because we paid a little more than someone who wasn't interested in this broader property might have. And because, the house is a total renovation, remove a barn before it collapses on somebody kind of thing. But first, it gets us friendly neighbors for the community because we ourselves would be the neighbors. And the other is that it makes the whole property venture less expensive because there's one more household unit that can divide the broader property in. So anyway, so that's why we're here. And that's kind of the start of what I'm thinking of. So to reiterate, we're far northeast New York on Lake Champlain, across from Vermont, an hour to Canada, 5 hours north of the city. Okay, so we're still going. Okay, so what would we do here? So it's kind of funny. You write out missions and visions and things like that, and they're kind of wonky when you read them. But so the mission, personally, thinking is to live well, to have a life that's good and beautiful. And so in this context, from without physically, that means to design, build, inhabit, and evolve a space as place that to the best of its and our own particularities cultivates the fullness of our human being while we're still alive. And then from within, this is particular to what I want to do, to always attempt a working presence, kind of like a mindfulness, and also to commit to work the muscle of the goodness of our heart, because it's only through practice that we become better as people in our own heart and being good. And so as a community to practice being good to each other. So how do we achieve that? So from a physical perspective, the very first thing is the farm. Um, and I guess you could slide down and look at some different pictures. Um, so you can, just keep going down. So this just kind of locates us. You can kind of see where we are in the state. There's like a little yellow pinpoint there, and it shows the Amtrak train, or way up there. It shows you can take the ferry across to Vermont, and that's like the view of the town from the ferry. And then you can go down a little bit more, and you can see the broader pictures of the farm. So like the one is looking south towards the town, and the other is looking west towards the Adirondack Mountains, and the other is looking east towards the Green Mountains in Vermont. And then so it starts with some clustered farm structures, and clearly there's somebody who wasn't a farmer who built them because they're much nicer than farmers can generally afford. And you can keep going down. So I guess we'll just see what we're starting with, and then we'll talk about it. So there, at the very bottom on the left now, there's a timber frame horse barn. There's a couple, there are two, that's one of two. There are two hay barns. They're 50 by 75. They're steel frame, red lead paint, that kind of thing. There's a workshop with a radiant slab heating on the inside, and it comes with one residence, renovated in 2008. And then that's the interior of the horse barn. They haven't put like the ceiling in, like to keep horses warm in winter yet. But essentially that second floor could become a residence, the way we can parcel it out. Okay, you can pause there and then I'll talk a little bit about the farm. So the core of the community is the farm. So you could have urban communities, rural, semi-rural, suburban communities. But this is a rural and farm-based community, where life is principally agricultural, it revolves agriculturally. It's a collaborative farm, but we're not everybody is a farmer, and maybe even no one is a full-time farmer, because one of the key points of this is balance. I've had a lot of imbalanced years as a farmer, and trying to figure out how to get balance there. So one of those is if a certain fraction of people if their time is not spent farming but doing other work, then almost any other job pays more money than farming, and so it's easier to cover the expenses of life. There are switching costs where if you have 10 people farming for half a day, they can't necessarily do as much as 5 people in a full day. But we would work less than 72 hours a week in season is the idea. And that lets us commit to a more broader self. Farming hits almost every facet of our being, and it makes one think that it actually fulfills every single part of you. But there's more to life than farming. So that's kind of baked into it. And then as to the collaborative part, there's only so much that any one person can do. I mean, they can dream a huge amount, but they can't actually do it all. And we can do so much more when we work together. And in fact, we can even dream more than we could on our own. So I like that. I've just really, really liked working with other farmers. So that's the collaborative part. Historically, it's mostly been hayed. They used to have animals on it and they used to raise some grain, but for a while it's been hayed now. And so you can zoom down, or sorry, you can scroll down a little bit. And so 400 acres is a lot to manage. And so how I was going to break it up was, you can see you can pause now, the goldenrod, some large fraction of it we can turn into wildflower apiary, where you mow it every third year, every 3 years, that kind of thing, for an apiary. And then another fraction of it for dual purpose sheep that have fleece, wool, and dairy products like cheese, butter, ghee, that kind of thing. And that just, rather than sitting on a big tractor and mowing like 300 acres ever and trying to sell that much hay, that's not my vision. So I would much rather be walking through wildflower meadows with honey coming out of that, and sheep with wool and ghee. And then maybe at a certain point, one can only pick so many cherry tomatoes and beans for other people. And so I feel that the vegetable farm side of things, we would have a vegetable farm, would be kind of a sustenance farm. It'd be for us more of a collaborative homestead in a way. And so that comes out to about an acre in vegetables. And I just put a picture of Four Season Farm here for various reasons. I don't know if we'd have that much plastic, but that's just a well-known farm in the vicinity. And then I'm in love with fruit trees and nut trees. And when I was in New York as a 10-month-old, I can basically still remember my mom picking apples off the ground in the orchard while I laid in the grass. And so I can essentially smell it. So I want more of that. And I've had younger trees in the past that were standards. And so for a pick your own type operation, I'd like semi-dwarfs. And it's kind of a sharing the fun of agriculture with the community. So it's kind of the fun things. So like tree fruit and small fruit, pumpkins, Christmas trees. I would be very happy to hand someone a Christmas tree and some hot chocolate around that time of year. And then you can scroll down a little bit more. And I have a picture of a Monty Don in his long meadow in England. So when we get to looking at how things can be laid out, there's a big section in the middle where the homes are. It doesn't have the right soils technically for growing vegetables and fruit trees well. But if we're just doing it for ourselves, then we can do whatever we want. So someone as inspired as Monty Don would be great to come turn it into like a beautiful thing in that middle. So then we can go down further. So that was kind of the farm is the core of it. And then the next part is that it's like a neighborhood essentially. The way that this, you can pause right there so we can look at the neighborhood part. Can you zoom in on it, like on the top right picture? Is that
Yeah.
possible? Yeah. So anyways, the way that the APA in Willsboro have it, we can really only get 7 homes out of the 401 acres that is for sale. And then when we have the little property we bought, 3071 Essex Road is 4 acres, makes 8. And there's kind of a land use zone split that you can kind of see paralleling the major road there, the yellow road there, New York 22. And so the homes kind of follow along there. That's how we can get them in there. The northern parcel happens to have a conservation easement on it. We can get just one home there and in a particular spot. So looking at the views, like not wanting to block the majesty of the place with homes, essentially, then they kind of lay out where they are in like the upper right quadrant of that one picture. And so, you know, rather than everyone living all together communally, for example, it's kind of like a co-housing neighborhood. Everyone has their own home and their own space. And it's called Atelier because in ninth grade English, that was the word we learned for an artist studio. And I always felt, I guess I feel like an artist in many ways as a writer, but I feel like many people have artistic passions within them, which come out in different ways. And so if one of the foundations of our work, which I'll get into, is just making the world more good and beautiful, then the studios or the atelier for every home kind of goes with it along the way there. uh, so everyone has their own home and their studios on site, and then there'd be a communal house. Right now, the structure that has like the heated slab that's like a workshop as a barn would be a would be a good one, and one could even use that space as kind of like a phase and place for people. Um, so that's the start there. So we're clustered as tightly as we can get with the town zoning, where you have to have like 200 feet between homes, essentially. And that even looks at calculating like how does like the winter solstice light come through and not blocking anyone's light, because um, I love light in my house and I don't want to block that from anyone else. Okay, so you can see we can get about 8 houses. The bulk of the land is in commons, and so we would uh, have like a comprehensive land use plan essentially and figure out like what do we want to do with it, and then who do we want to lease it to. And essentially we would just make our own, not a subsidiary LLC, but we'd make our own farm or multiple farms and lease out to ourselves, possibly to someone else if we wanted to, for that space. Uh, yeah, so the common house for, you know, dinners together, hanging out. It's nice to not have to make dinner every single night. It's nice to share food with people. When I taught ecology in the Catskills, that was one of my favorite things, was just going to the dining hall and being among people. So I like that. Um, so we looked at the farm as a component, the commons as a component, the neighborhood as a component. And then one of the other big components physically is human scale. So I have a little bit of a speech from David Foster Wallace. It's very short, don't worry. In a commencement speech, he said, "This is water." That's what it's called. So he said, "There are these 2 young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, 'Morning, boys, how's the water?' And the 2 young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, 'What the hell's water?'" So to me, the scale of space and speed at which we live is so like fundamental and foundational to how we are as beings, that it's invisible to us, just like water for those fish. Um, Farming, kind of living on my feet and on my hands, even always show me that, because if I got in a truck and left, it felt different, and when I came back to the farm, it felt different. And so that feeling, that sense of jarring from like the momentum of being, is something I'd like to reduce. And so I like human scale. I think it makes for a more human life. And so that's part of the aim here, is that the work is principally on site. Mostly is like a term for me. It's like mostly on site work. The town is 1.5 miles away, so it's a quick bike ride. It's a pretty quick walk. And that's the design of that. And then to the human side of things, because like right now it's super broad. If there are only 8 households we can get in, then like how do we think about who we live with? And I think that filtering down into some kind of similarity among people just makes sense logistically, and it helps a lot. It only gets you so far, obviously. So the first part is people who are good at heart, like GOOD, good people. Um, I, you know, that, I think I'd like to start with that. If I can choose, it'd be good people, because part of the mission is being good to each other and good to ourselves. So that's the start of that, and not everyone is up for that. So, and it's not super radical. I don't think so. So having a community that kind of fosters what is sometimes a vulnerable thing, um, you know, to have that. I see I've hit 22 minutes. So would you like me to stop or just keep going?
You can keep going. Yeah, keep
Okay,
going,
okay.
but
I have,
we'll wrap up soon this part. But don't worry.
yeah, okay. Yeah, this is okay. Non-dogmatic. I'm just, you know, Isaiah Berlin's The Hedgehogs and the Fox, where the hedgehog knows one thing and the fox knows many things. I feel much more like the fox. who just knows all the things, and so I'm a big fan of belief, but not really dogma. I like idealists over ideologues, and pragmatists over idealists, even so, maybe pragmatic idealists. Um, but in the end, folks who are like nearly reflexively open-minded is nice. It's helpful to be around that. The other part is folks who are startled by the fact of being, that we're alive, that there is a thing to be in. It's a funny thing to say or write down, but that's like one of the core components of this is trying to establish pathways and habits and reflexes of maintaining that kind of awakening. Because most of the time we're sleeping and wake up, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm alive, and then go back to sleep. So that's part of it. Um, with regard to work, passion driven folks, not necessarily mission driven, but kind of passion driven. So, folks, people who love the work that they're doing and kind of feel it as a gift they get to give. Um, Diet. So, this is kind of where we start to filter down. So, vegetarian ish. Um, I, I don't know if anyone can really work on a farm and not see like some of the truths of life and death and all of that. The sheep for wool and for dairy, you don't have to kill the guys because you can get wool from them, that kind of thing. Um, no drugs and alcohol. I guess that's probably strict. Speaking with my wife, yep, more like Buddhistic, yogic. Phone free friendly, because it's very interesting how these devices connect us or disconnect us to different people, different places. And so having a policy on how we manage that, especially going into the future. So there'd be a policy on that. And then the work we could do, you can kind of zoom down and we'll go quickly. So folks can do anything in their studios. I would like to build wooden bicycles and see kayaks and canoes and open water sculls and things like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. We're on the water. When I lived on an island in the Atlantic, that kind of thing really pulled at me. Um, but it's not a necessary thing. It'd be fun to find people who can do that. And we can also work collaboratively with the whole community on something like that. We're close to the Adirondacks, so I've worked in kind of like team building and self building in the past. My wife is a life coach, and so wilderness and wildness, really like a sense of personal wildness, retreats in the Adirondacks are pretty compelling. Uh, we do all this work to try to build our own eco villages and communities, and we learn a lot. And it'd be nice perhaps to have a design collaborative of folks who work on all the different components of that and help other people do it too. And there are all kinds of scales you can imagine for that, from like neighborhood retrofits on to brand new things. And we can keep going down and we'll wrap it up because I think this is the last of it. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Yep, can go down. So we also just in town, there's the tavern. It went up for sale, and it started at 1.2 million and just kept dropping. And my wife and I were able to get a commercial loan for a mixed use structure. The top is a residence, which is very, very nice, like way too nice for us. Um, and then the downstairs, I was hoping to turn into kind of a village common house and a market. And the market is part of a much broader project on like an agricultural economy and culture for our particular region of the world. Um, while my wife, she lived in Denmark for about 6 years and traveled throughout Europe, fellow person in Germany, and she was impressed at how they still had both bioregional cultures and bioregional food. And so it's it's just, anyways, that's the start of that. And it also gives some part-time income. Uh, okay, so I went over a little bit, but uh, that's where we are right now.
Great. Good. Yeah. And more to be shared too during our more of the Q&A conversation part. Wonderful. Thank you, Austin. I'm so impressed you have this too. You just throw this in at the end. Oh, and we also have this little shop in town. That's great.
Well, the closing is next Wednesday or so, so it's not official yet.
Not
But
official yet, but yeah, a lot going on, a lot that you're working on. Incredible.
and thank
Yes.
you for doing the scrolling thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Happy to
mhm,
help. Um,
mhm.
you don't know this, but I actually worked at Essex Farm very
Oh,
briefly when I
okay.
was in college.
Uh-huh,
I read the book about them, The Dirty
uh-huh.
Life. I was
Yeah,
there
yeah.
for a little while. And folks, this is an incredibly beautiful part of the world. The town of Essex, Lake Champlain, the mountains, it's beautiful and so accessible to Burlington as well, which is kind of like the big city sort of in this region, which is it's a really nice university town. So yeah, you've really found a prime location to create this community endeavor. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Adirondack Park Agency, the APA, it's very interesting what it's done to that corner of the world in terms of kind of slowing down development. So
Mhm.
it's pretty nice that way. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, I would love to open it up for questions. So feel free, if anyone has questions, you can put it in the chat. We're also a pretty small group, so feel free to unmute, give me a wave. Yeah, anything goes. We're in the Q&A portion here. But maybe to start with, Austin, I'm curious. So you've spoken a lot about the vision for the community, and it's clear you've given it a lot of thought and have a lot of your expertise in farming to bring to the table. I'm curious, for people here who are thinking, ooh, this seems cool. How might I get involved? And what would be the pathway to becoming a member? Have you thought of that? Are you still like just looking for co-founders or investors or yeah, what do you think about that?
I guess I see member as the same thing as a co-founder and maybe investor at the same time.
Mhm.
I kind of like did like a brain dump on the web, like a word vomit of a website, and I just removed that because I essentially documented everything I was thinking about, and I thought it was overwhelming. So it is possible for folks to get to that and read more about it in detail. And that in some ways would let them know, like, is this actually what I want? No, it's not what I want. Or, oh, wow, I want to know more. And there was a survey to fill out, but that's kind of more of a once everyone's ready, then everyone can know what everyone else is kind of thinking about to get on the same page. The website, um, www.atelierfarm.com, has a little note at the bottom that says, if you're interested, send a note with this like subject and answer a couple questions. And it's basically like, why are you interested? What are you dreaming about? Do you have any hesitations or questions or concerns or that kind of thing to start a conversation? The, I mean, the hardest thing, like if it were inexpensive, I probably would have gotten a loan and bought it, you know. So the property is presently off the market. It just took it off the market about a month ago because it'd been on for maybe almost 2 years. It was listed at $2.5 million. It was originally $6 or $8 million with a property on the water. And here, this is a someone from Canada and China, a husband and wife, who have more money than most. And so they sold the house on the water and kept the farm property. And the farm property is too expensive for just a regular farmer and isn't on the water for someone who has $2.5 million to then build like a $2 million house. And so it's kind of in the middle ground, which is perfect for us. But at $2.5 million, even if we argued it down to 2 million, the buy-in is close to $250,000, like 240 to $300,000 to get in. And then we have to work to, as cost effectively as possible, build homes on top of that. That can whittle people down too, unfortunately. I was working with Anka, which we're not working, speaking with Anka on a call yesterday, and they have some contacts for co-op, for folks who help you establish co-ops and fund co-ops. So I was thinking of making an LLC that's structured like a co-op and going through Farm Credit East, purchasing originally in cash and then using a loan through Farm Credit East to build the houses, like a home construction loan. Um, because we were able to get this house that's kind of the original house, and then there is one house on it, you can kind of get a home equity line of credit from those two homes to then build new homes. And it's all dependent upon people having some kind of stable income stream. Um, I've never had a stable income stream. So my expectation was that if we could get the property, then like within a couple of years or even a year, that people would be better able to show more stable income. And that as an LLC, we could use different means of getting some fraction of the money for home construction. Um, so to answer your question was, how do they learn more? How do they get in touch? They go to the website. They can go to the details section. I can send them to that and they can learn more about it. Yeah, and they can ask questions here if they're here.
Yeah, yeah, great.
Can I ask a question? Um,
Yeah, Chris,
Uh-huh.
go for
Hi, I'm down in Western Mass, and I know that area. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely it's the best place in the East. That whole area there with the
Mhm.
Adirondacks at one side and Vermont and New Hampshire on the other side. It's really awesome. Um, my question is, I was just down at the Churchtown Dairy. They had a big it was the Real Organic Project. It's down in New York
Mhm.
too. It's down near not too far from Hudson, New York, if you know where that is. And
Mhm.
have you bought the land yet, or you haven't, right? You
No,
haven't.
no.
Okay, I want to be clear. What they were talking
Yeah,
about, and I'm just giving you a heads up, is one of the big deals was that they've been spreading sewage sludge on farms all over the U.S.
yeah,
And one of the presenters there was talking about they had an organic farm in Maine, and they 30 years ago they spread all the sludge, and there was turns out the PFAS was there all the time. So I just wanted to give you a heads up, if
yeah.
to test the soil before you buy it.
I
Just
do
just
appreciate that. I had, yeah, they rebranded it Biosolids long ago.
That's
So
well, that's the PR name. Yeah, but it's sewage
yeah,
sludge
yeah,
and it's loaded with
yeah.
heavy metals and PFAS and other things. So it's just I just wanted to bring it up just because it was fresh in my mind from the thing last week. And the nightmare of having go through all this and then to not have tested it and find out later would be off the charts. So I just wanted to bring.
I will do the test then. I was kind of when I was given the history of the property, that crossed my mind, and it seemed like because they were doing things organically since this person owned it, it seemed
Yeah,
unlikely. But you never know without testing. So
it's quite
yeah,
possible. Yeah. The people in
yeah,
Maine bought it from an organic farmer. They actually bought their
yeah,
land from an organic farmer. Before them, they had spread this stuff, and it's forever
yeah.
chemicals. I don't mean to be Dougie Downer, but I just wanted
No, 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 no.
to,
It's
you know,
I
and
appreciate it. Thank you. Uh-huh.
yeah, no, it's a fantastic idea and place, and for I honestly, it's perfect. My only drag is I hate cold weather, so I'm not.
Mhm.
It's maybe in 20 years it won't be so, but I'm still interested. I mean, we could always, my wife's from Brazil, so we could go
Uh-huh.
for a month or two down there. So anyway, I think it's a
Uh,
great project and a great place, and I, that's all.
no, I
And then I'll
appreciate it.
just
And the system that has made us have to create the real organic project is the same system that made sludge into biosolids to spread on farms also. Um, yeah. And I farmed
right.
in Virginia for 5 years, and I would get sick just picking raspberries, which is the easiest thing to do on a farm. So actually, I like to be slightly colder. So constitutionally, I'm happy to be here, but I know folks who wouldn't. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, great. Were there other questions that anyone is sitting on? Something you'd like to ask? Livia? Yeah, go ahead. I don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I'm pardon the background noise, but yeah, it's nice to meet you officially. Since
Yeah.
and, nice to see everyone here. I guess yeah, my question was kind of like what you I was wondering what you have in mind for like community wise, like for example, if you imagine like 10 years from now, like who do you want living on the property and like what do you imagine people are doing on the property? Because I know that there's so many answers for like what people want out of community and the people that they choose to take with them. Are there things that you want people to be bringing to the table or yeah, just very curious about all of that because I know it's so different for everyone that I've talked to.
Yeah. And it's how does one design for the future and for longevity when thinking about like the soft landing out of farming. Yeah, like there are folks who are orchardists until they're 95, and But how do you even phase out if you are the farmer, and then how do you transition to another farmer once you're retiring? Do you stay on site? That kind of thing. So part of having, this is a side answer, but part of having the studios is they allow for multi-generationality in the community. So you can have your college age and older children come back and stay. You can have your parents live there. You can kind of, by policy, rent out if you need to. You can kind of phase in and out. There is a kind of a side channel in the APA where they allow a farmer to build farm worker housing for their farm workers and have it count as one principal structure, which gets you around from like the parcelization of land, which is a way to kind of like phase people in and out. But that's not answering your question, which was, what am I dreaming of? How do I see it in 10 years? When I was farming, I always felt like at first you're drowning, and then you're kind of treading water, and then eventually you're swimming, and then maybe in the end you're walking on water because you've got your systems down, and you know what you're doing. And I kind of see it like that, which is maybe delusional in some ways, but that the frothiness of the start has kind of gone down a little bit, and we're all a little bit older. Some people have come, some people have gone. But that if we write at the beginning the vision, the mission, if we are very like even quarterly considerate about maintaining the path in a way, or even evolving the path, then people are generally where they want to be, because you enter in knowing what you're trying to do, and then you do it. Yeah, and then allowing, preventing stagnation, allowing flow. So making it liquidity easy. If someone's not happy, being able to go. It's certainly, if someone isn't happy in a place, then it's nobody happy. So allowing for that. But I basically, I see just, the trees are finally bigger and producing, and it's just a little more restful than the original creative phase. And you take stock again, like, is, somewhere I read, like, don't make 5-year plans because you'll change your mind in 5 years. Like, are we happy or are we not happy? Why are we happy? And is that in any way even tied to the community or to ourselves? I mean, I began by saying I'm trying to make a place worthy of childhood for my children. And so it's certainly like the engine of it all is what I have received from farming, been given from farming, which is a life which is grounded and nourishing, and sometimes hot and sometimes cold, but always for me fantastic. And in all of my community type farming and all the farming I've done with collaborative farmers, I've not had the experience that people keep warning about, like, oh, be careful about community. So in my experience, I have like the positive anecdote of people getting along and being mature enough to work through what comes up, because things always come up. So that's, I guess I see the evolution of, or the growth of the little seed that we start with into something good, but also recognizing maybe not. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does in part. I mean, because
Mhm.
I think it's like you're saying, where people grow and change over time, right? And the vision is bound to do that as well. But it sounds like you've experienced kind of like people being just naturally unified in a shared purpose and shared projects. And it sounds like that's been that's kept things sustainable and enjoyable. Is that kind of, am I getting at correctly?
Yeah, in some ways it's shared purpose, in other ways it's just shared experience, and commonality. And I'm trying to make something that gives space to cultivate your personal self, your like partner relationship, your family relationship, your neighbor, and your broader tiny eco-village collaborative farm. So that you can kind of phase in and out of, like, now I want more private time, now I want more social time. Um, hmm.
Great.
That's
Austin.
beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
It is beautiful. Yeah, I love this the envisioning the future is really neat. I'm curious for folks listening who maybe want to get involved. They wouldn't have the resources to get involved in the level that you're looking for at this time, but maybe there's still something like, let's say you hopefully, fingers crossed, get this land, get it all started. Is there a way that they still could maybe bring a tiny house or come, be involved at a lower financial commitment?
Yeah, I'm definitely I have to figure that out basically. And part of that is how we personally and anyone else who even has like the startup, like very first startup money can phase in terms of homes. And so there are rules about like principal structure boundaries within the parcel and where you can put accessory structures and such. So it seems that it could be possible that you could put in a pad for the house and then just drop on a tiny house on top of it that meets zoning requirements, and that is essentially a future studio where you could do your work and have like your children or parents, and then build a house on that later. And so that's one thing. The community house would likely have a guest room, and so the guest room could function as kind of visiting member, I suppose, kind of thing. And then anyone else could also, if they had the money to build a studio, they could just, we could, whatever the policy says, rent it out to folks to stay in there. There are rules about tourists accommodations in the APA where you have to be there 5 years before you can have a bed and breakfast and things like that. But I don't think that falls under that. Um, uh, it's it's interesting when you work as a crew. Sometimes you just kind of want to be together and not have things coming in and out, people coming in and out, and sometimes you want that. So it'd be a collective decision about how much fluidity we want in that regard in terms of like the percentage of people who are stable or not stable. Um, yeah, I've gotten lots of people looking for a work share, and it's like I can't offer
Yeah,
that yet.
I'm sure.
Um,
I'm sure.
uh, but I mean, I I think it's nice, like new blood and perspective and things like that is always like revitalizing. So it'd be nice to be able to offer that. It's just being able to offer that. You know, if we win the lottery, then then it's a lot easier barrier for of entry. So.
Right. Chris, you have another question?
Sure. Two questions. And I don't mean to take too much time, but is the ultimate idea that you purchase the property, you've got the homes, the people that are living there are working the farm, and then they share the income from that, or something else? How does that go? And then this,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Okay. So yes. So there are. I mean, any farm can have any number of missions that it's working on, and if you can find a farm that's just like a watermelon farm, and then you can find a vegetable farm, and you can find a farm that's vegetables and chickens and then pigs, and then so what makes sense to bind together and what makes sense to pull apart. So some models have it where everyone makes their own
Okay,
LLC, and I'm going to be the bee person, you're the sheep person, and we're going to kind of rent from
I
each
see.
other the equipment and the land. um, that's a possibility. For me, it makes it harder for someone to say, like, I've been head of sheep for the last 5 years. I'd like to be head of the orchard now, and then to kind of transition that way. And so
I see.
um, I was thinking more that everyone would be uh, kind of a multi-member LLC for the farm, and they're leasing it from the community, the land, whatever rules they have for that, and that you kind of have like a minimum wage or some kind of low number that everyone gets, and then you can, if you make enough money that year, then you made more money, and so everyone has their own bank account for their own particular mission, and but you collectively figure out what do we want to all do together, and then you have managers for every particular thing, so nobody's micromanaged. But if someone is very passionate about apples, but also about staples, but I don't have enough time to manage both of those things, they can give their input and like their wisdom even on one thing while someone else manages it. And so if someone is running sheep and they're making way less money per hour than someone running vegetables, then I mean, I don't think that the person running the sheep should necessarily make less. If you did it all together, then you kind of would split it out, assuming that the whole works financially, assuming that you're always in the black and not in the red. And
I
that's,
got you.
and so you have to succeed that way or fail essentially. And part of it is the community would have to be paying agricultural taxes, or taxes if it weren't in agriculture. And so in some ways the community subsidizes the farm a little bit because they say, sure, can you farm our land? Otherwise we're paying some amount of taxes. Does that answer your first question?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just getting an idea what you were thinking. And what did you mean
Mhm.
by 72 hours maximum?
No, okay. So like as a farmer, especially in like you work a lot of hours in a week. Like for example, 60, 65, 70 or more hours a week. And that's imbalanced and not sustainable. And so the point was, is there a way to farm where you don't work that many hours? And it's just like, well,
Okay.
if some of your other hours, whether in winter or during the season, were spent doing something that earned a little more money, or if you had a partner who did something which made more money, then you could work a farm which is not trying to earn more and more and more and more at tiny fractions, but work a farm which is stable, but the other money that is really founding your life is coming from something else, whereas the farm is founding like your being and it's not losing money. But and
I got
providing
you.
other things for other people, like making money, but you're not like the aim isn't to make as
So
much money
just the
from farming.
idea of work-life balance, you're trying to have something there for that.
Absolutely, work life
Yeah.
balance. Yeah, that's I mean that's in the name. Atelier was yeah.
Okay. And the other
Mhm.
question was everybody would have their own house, like a co-housing. So in their kitchen, they could eat whatever they want. It's just the community kitchen, you're saying that would be vegetarian-ish?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a little bit of a can of worms in that regard, but
And
yeah.
the glass
So
of wine too is in that mix with the
I suppose, I suppose that would all be written out. Yeah, that's up for discussion, but certainly that there's kind of a logistical thing if you only have 8 households. If you have like the least common denominator meal where everyone is like eating like dried green beans or something. So if you have a general thing that people can rally around, they really appreciate it, they like a particular kind of diet, then it's a lot easier if you're sharing meals.
Yeah,
when you
the
share
shared
meal.
meal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
I think we have time just for one last question and then we'll wrap up. Robin is asking, Austin, you mentioned art and studios. Can you clarify your vision for this?
Okay. When I thought we could get more homes on the property, I was not intentionally misled by the real estate agent who said that there's an easement on the property which didn't influence the number of homes you could have on the northern parcel. When I thought we could have more homes, I was thinking like, oh, we might have a third of the people are farmers, for example, full-time farmers or some fraction like that equivalent. And the rest, what are we doing? So I was looking at different things we could be doing. It's like, oh, someone could be like a luthier making guitars, and someone could be a piano tuner, and someone could be a writer or whatever it is. And so we have a little bit less room for that, but not entirely. So yeah, so the idea is that we're like multi-hyphenated vocationally as human beings. And so you might farm, you might be in charge of bees, but you're also a writer or an artist or something like that, as long as everyone can still afford taxes, basically. Uh, mhm.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so encouraging many different disciplines, not only the farming. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting your model. You've really envisioned in quite detail certain aspects of it. So it's good that we're getting a chance to listen and hopefully you're getting a chance too to share this in kind of a more public way and hopefully attract more interest. How is that going? Are you finding people who might be on the pathway towards joining that initial team, or how is it going for you?
I don't have much digital surface area, so this is like my first presentation of it.
Yeah.
So it's going all right, I guess I would say. I mean, just putting website up and putting in a New York Farmland Finders and IC match, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think, I mean, we're like a quarter of the way in some sense, like not necessarily, but because we don't have that many people to find. But I can do better. I think it depends. The future of this depends upon me doing a better job of finding people, because the theory in real estate is you take it off the market, you reset the day counter, you put it back on, it gets new eyeballs, maybe it's at a lower price, and then like, are we prepared for someone swooping in? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
So yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
What is IC Match? So intentional community, the Foundation for Intentional Communities has a place for you to find other intentional communities, and I spent a little bit of money to advertise there. So someone asked the question, what is Icy Match?
Yeah, yeah, great. Very good. Okay. Well, yeah, I hope this is just the beginning of you giving more presentations and getting the word out more. It really seems like a beautiful vision and beautiful land. So I'm hoping it works for you. And thank you as well for your time. Thanks everyone for your time and being here and listening and your support and your good questions. And I hope to see you again in 2 weeks' time to learn from another community. All
Thank you,
right. Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, Austin. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.